In this video, we are going to remake Roses by the Band Camino, and it's gonna sound like this. Hello everyone, welcome back. In this video, we are going to explore the sound of the Band Camino with their single Roses. The first time I ever heard this song and came across the band was in 2022. And I loved all of the songs from the Band Camino album, but the song that stood out the most to me was Roses. The Band Camino is known for their crisp sound, and personally I feel their productions are full of minute ear candies and details. So I want to take you along with me and show you how the song was made. But before that, a quick plug. If you enjoy my videos and my music, I help independent artists make amazing sounding pop music like this. So if you're an artist and you make music like this, and you're looking for a music producer to help you with your music, there's a quick form. I'll leave a link in the description and you can fill it out and get in touch with me. So with everything out of the way, let's get straight into it. So here is our project. We'll start from the intro, build the verse, move on to the pre-chorus, and finally the chorus. Let's take a look at the intro first. Upon listening to the intro, it was pretty evident to me that they had used a tape stop effect. I realized that it is simply the piano sound that is playing in the verses. So let's directly take a look at the piano for the verse. I layered this first piano with another piano, which sounds like this. This is a more dull sounding piano, but it backs up the first piano really well, and I've panned it to the right. Now talking about selecting the sounds for these pianos, the first piano is from the preset LA Custom C7 Unreal Smash by Keyscape. I love this plugin, I use it on almost every project of mine. And for the character, we are on the hard setting and on full color shift. No reverb, and this is what our EQ looks like. This sounds pretty hard and crisp, but for the second piano, I wanted it to sound a little more dull than the first piano so that it could sit nicely behind the first one. And specifically, I also wanted this piano to have a little longer release. So I went with the Steinway grand piano from Apple's stock library, and it fits in really well with the main piano. This is the first piano playing on its own without the second piano. Sounds a little too clean, but the song definitely has two pianos and the second one is panned to the right, so that is what we did here. Now that I have the piano laid down, for the intro all I needed to do was hit Ctrl B. This gave me the bounce regions in place menu, and once I had these exported, all I had to do was just add in a tape stop effect. The way I did that was I added in a fade, then I went into this region, and from this drop down I just selected slow down, so it gives me that tape stop effect that I needed. But still something felt missing from the intro, so what I did was I added this brass patch. I played this in, it was just one note being played in two different octaves, and I used the pitch bend knob on my MIDI keyboard, and it sounded like this. To this again we add the tape stop effect, we go to region, add in a fade, and select slow down from the menu. So this is how our intro has been built. Next, we move on to the drums for the verse. Upon listening to the song, I realized that the drums in the chorus and the verses are not the same. That is because the drums in the chorus sounded like they were recorded live, while the drums in the verses were much more electronic sounding. So I went ahead and built a small drum kit for myself for the verse with this kick and these two rim shots. All of them have a nice room reverb on them except the kick, and this is what the pattern sounds like. It repeats throughout the verse, and with the piano it sounds like this. The next thing we add is a high percussion sound which plays a pattern similar to. So for this, I just needed something that had some high frequencies on it, preferably something like a cymbal or a hi-hat, but instead I found this sample. I wanted to cut this sound, so added in a fade towards the end, brought the end here, and the start to about here. This was pretty much how I wanted it to sound. I brought the pitch to about -2, brought down the fine tuning to about -28 cents, and I wanted to get rid of some of the low frequency. So I just did a crazy high pass to it, and this is how it sounds like. Panned it a little towards the right, and with the drum it sounds like this. Adding in the piano. The verse of this song goes on till about 12 bars, and from the 4th bar we enter with a bass guitar. For the bass guitar, I'm using Modo Bass by IK Multimedia, and we are on the studio bass guitar. It sounds like this. The bass guitar follows the same pattern as the piano, so I played it in. Pretty simple. So the way the bass guitar enters into the verse is through a bass riser, which took the longest time for me to make, but I think I got it close to the original, and this is how it sounds like. This is the element that took me the longest to make because I just could not wrap my head around what it was. So I tried layering a bunch of sounds, and this is how I achieved it. This riser consists of only 2 notes which sound like this. This is a Stinger bass preset from Logic's stock library, and to this sound I added some drive to really allow it to cut through the mix. Next I added Little Radiator by Sound Toys, and I'm almost on the max setting. Next I realized that this riser is in stereo and not in mono, so to achieve that I'm using Dimension Expander, and the size is on almost 25% and the mix is on 100%. Now it sounds like this. A little more stereo width. Added some phase distortion. I just needed a little more dirt on it, so this plugin is helping with that. And finally an EQ to cut out the highs. I bounce this in place, hit Ctrl B. Let's get this down in volume. Cut the 2 notes. Now here's the thing, the first note comes in slowly, so I added in a nice fade in and kept the second note as it is. But this sound in itself was not enough, so I wanted it to layer with some other sounds. This is a small addition that I did from my side. I took the MIDI from the previous bass sound and I got it onto a piano sound and played it on the extreme lower octave and exported it like the bass sound, and this is what it sounds like. I added a tremolo plugin on the 1/64 rate and on 100% depth, so this is what it sounds like now. I wanted that little oscillation sound from the piano, so with the bass it sounds like this. I still felt like this stack of sounds was missing something even more dirtier, so for this particular sound I used a contact instrument called Substance, and on the Fat Bastard preset I just switched off this oscillator and it sounds like this. Again, bounce this in place, added a fade in for the first note. With the previous 2 sounds it sounds like this. And finally I added one more sound with the same MIDI and it sounds like this. So this is what the whole bass stack sounds like with the rest of the instruments. This is the point where our bass guitar comes in. This bass riser thing acts like a nice introductory element for a bass guitar, because before this point we had no bass frequencies, it was just the piano playing. The next important thing which I could hear in the original were some vocal chops. So here are our vocal chops. I sang this melody into my voice notes app on my iPhone. Added in some autotune with Waves tune real time. It sounds like this. The first note of this melody has some kind of a ducking sound to it, so I just simply added a fade and I went extreme with it. It sounds like this. The same melody gets repeated twice. Now let's move on to the processing of this sound. I did NS1 by Waves to get rid of the background noise. Some little radiator on the most maximum setting. a bandpass EQ. I'm cutting the highs and the lows. Logic's distortion plugin. It also includes some reverb. So I'm using the Valhalla Vintage Verb on 34.9% mix and 1.37 DK. I didn't touch the rest of the settings. Adding in this beautiful plugin called Manipulator by Infected Mushroom for some formant and some voice modulation. Simply brought the pitch up by 12 semitones, brought the formant to about 14 and played around with the ratio and FM. Now particularly I wanted some saturation in this frequency band, so I brought in Ozone 9 Exciter by Isotope and I'm applying some saturation on this band only. I'm on the triode mode and 100% mix and 12.3 amount. So this is what it sounds like. Without it, it was missing that body which this plugin brought in. And finally an EQ. What this EQ is doing is cutting out the lows below 55 Hz and cutting out the highs above 3.6k Hz, and I'm using mid-side EQ technique just to get rid of the mids from the center of the stereo field. With the rest of the instruments. There is one more vocal chop pattern that I added which sounds like this. Again started off with this sound. Added in some tuning by Waves. Again the NS1. Little radiator. The same EQ. Some bit crusher. On about 30% mix. Again the Valhalla Verb for some reverb. Manipulator. Now for this sound I did not use the format at 14 like the previous sound. Instead I got it to minus 7.17 to get that more throaty kind of a sound. The Isotope Exciter. This is a wave shaper called STFU. And again an EQ. I'm boosting 2.2k and significantly cutting down 438 Hz and brickwalling about 11.6 kHz and a low cut till about 100 Hz. Now this is the majority of our verse. Let's play it from the start and see how it sounds. Next I added in this marching snare kind of a pattern. I am using the same drum kit that we are going to be using in the chorus. It is Native Instruments Studio Drummer on the Garage Kit Full. I played in this pattern. It is being repeated every 2 bars. And finally at about bar 10 there is a small reverse clap happening which I made using these 2 sounds. These are simply 2 clap samples which I found and which sound like this. Cut them down, reverse them and added in a fade in. And finally our intro and verse sound like this. Now we move on to the small pre-chorus which is just for about 2 bars. We'll start with this bell sound. Playing just these 2 notes, the C sharp and F. Layering it up with some drum sounds. This is a kick and a percussion sound. Layering it up with these three sounds. This is some sort of a metal hit, a hi-hat, and again a kick. Some stick sounds. A tom hit. But to this tom I added an EQ and cut down the lows. It almost sounds like a hi-hat now. And finally a clap sound. I forgot to mention how the verse ends. It ends with this simple melody. With the rest of the instruments it sounds like this. Now this pre-chorus acts as a beautiful transition element between the verse and the chorus, because the verse has energy but not too much. So this pre-chorus gives you a nice little breather in between the song, because the chorus just slaps for this song. Apart from these drum sounds, the final thing which I added for the pre-chorus was a subsonic boom, which I found in Apple's library. It sounds very sick. So with everything else, it sounds like this. Now about time we move on to the most important part and the most recognizable part of the song, which is the chorus. I started with programming the drums, which sound like this. I'll play them for you now. For these drums, I'm using the same garage kit by Native Instruments, and for this I'm using Firechild by Tone Empire. I love how drum kits sound when they have this plugin on them. It brings out so much aggression from any instrument, and I especially love it for drums. Without the plugin, with, I am on about 6 to 8 dBs of input gain. Output gain I've bumped up to about 5 dB. Brought the threshold down, so I'm getting about 3 to 5 dBs of gain reduction. I love how the snare sounds because of this plugin. One beautiful trick that I learned from a YouTube video which helped me immensely with sidechaining was adding this kick sidechain trigger. The way you do it is you duplicate your drum track, bring in your drum information down. You can mute or delete everything except the kick, and you're going to use this sound as your sidechain trigger for the bass. So what we'll do is, instead of sending it to stereo out, we are going to send it to no output, so that it does not make a sound. Even when I play it, you won't hear it, but it will be useful to trigger sidechain for your other instruments. In my case, I'm using sidechain on the bass to get the kick and the bass sit tightly. Next, I added a shaker to emphasize on the high frequencies of the rhythm section. It just helps push your hi-hats slightly. Next, I added a tambourine. Sent it to the bus, which has room reverb with the rest of the drums. Next, I added these nice crash samples. Panned them hard left and right. And if you listen closely to the original, the chorus starts with a scratch FX. So here is what a scratch sounds like. I'm using this plugin called Inner Pitch by Auburn Sounds. I have bumped up the pitch by about 2.49 semitones, cutting out the lows till about 60 Hz. And with the drum kit, it sounds like this. Moving on, let's take a look at our guitar section. This is a fairly simple guitar section with just 2 layers of electric guitar and 2 layers of acoustic guitar playing the same thing, but hard pan to the left and the right. We'll take a look at electric guitar first. This is what it sounds like. sounds like a fun chord progression. For both of these layers, I'm using my favorite guitar amp simulator. It's called Amplitude 5, and I'm using the thick preset on the first one. Panned it to a considerable amount to the left, and for the right layer, I'm again using Amplitude 5 on the Vintage Crunch preset. To both these layers, I'm adding a noise gate to reduce any unwanted sounds. These are sounds which you get from your strings or your guitar when you are using distortion on it. Let's take a listen at how the electric guitar sounds with the drums. In the original, you can also hear an acoustic guitar accompanying the electric guitar playing the same thing. So I double tracked it, panned it left and right, and this is what it sounds like. Cut down some lows, added it to the room reverb bus. And you might have noticed that I'm not using reverb on the electric guitar, but I'm using reverb on the acoustic guitar. That is because I wanted the distorted guitars to sound really compact and really tight, whereas I wanted the acoustic guitar to blend in well with our drums and the rhythm section. This is what both our guitars with the drums sound like. You can notice how the electric guitar gives you a nice body, but the acoustic guitar is where the bite is coming from. I still felt that these layers were missing more melodic information, so to accompany the guitars, I added some synth layers. The first layer sounds like this. I am on this Xenology plugin by Roland, and I'm using this Juno preset. I've kept this layer in the center. Now I'm going to add two layers which will be panned to the left and the right. For the left layer, I copied the same MIDI information and I'm using Serum in its default patch, but I've brought up the unison to about 5 and detuned it a little bit by itself. And for the right layer, I'm again using Xenology by Roland on this Jupiter patch. So my intention with these synth layers was to bring in the aggressiveness of the electric guitar, but not to make it sound really prominent. So I chose the sounds which blend in well with the electric guitar, but at the same time they bring in more aggressiveness. Our synths, our guitars and the drums sound like this together. Now it sounds complete and really full. The next obvious thing missing from a stack is a bass guitar. So I'll be using the same bass guitar as a verse, playing the root notes from the chords of the chorus. I'm also sidechaining this bass to the kick by using our kick sidechain trigger that we created. Now I wanted the bass to be even more prominent, so instead of just adding an EQ and boosting the highs like this, I brought in another bass sound which is a synth bass and it sounds like this. But because our original bass was fulfilling the duty of adding in low frequencies, I wanted this bass to strictly add in high frequencies. So what I did was I added a simple EQ. So I brought in this EQ to cut the lows till about 190 Hz, and both our basses sound like this together. With the rest of the instruments. Now I added a layer of piano playing the same chords as the synth. It sounds like this. I did this just to support the synth stack. And the final thing, and probably the most interesting element of the song, I did these dubstep bass hits. With the rest of the song, this is what they sound like. So to get this dubstep bass sound, I used a bunch of Kashmir loops. All these loops were in the key of F, so I brought them down 4 semitones. So I cut them carefully and mixed and matched them with trial and error to get this dubstep pattern. And with that, we come to the end of this tutorial. I absolutely love the process of making this song, and I'm gonna be honest with you, this is the first time in a while where I had to remake a song and it was challenging for me. And the Band Camino is a group which makes wonderful sounding music. Let's just listen to the whole track from start once. And with that, we come towards the end of this video. I hope you liked watching the whole process. Like I said, I had a lot of fun making it. Again, a quick reminder, if you're an artist who is looking for a music producer, I would love to jump on board and help you out. You can find a quick form in my description below and you can fill it up and we can get in touch. So with that, I would love to hear in the comments what artist you want me to cover next. And I will see you very soon in the next video. Peace.